Yeah, I think it's very clear that at least with commercial AI technologies, that they were not designed with educators. They did not have educators like opinions, as well as resource availabilities in mind while designing them. And as you absolutely said, like some of these tools are paid. Even if they weren't, almost all of them need computers, need access to internet, and that's simply not the reality in a lot of learning environments, both formal and informal learning. Like there's so much learning that even occurs in spaces outside of classrooms. So yeah, there's a lot of spaces where these tools are not equitable. Even the tools in their design themselves, like they've been trained on data sets that primarily come from the West. They primarily work in English. Like there are other languages, but it's a majority of it still is one language. Like the narratives they tell, the stories they tell, they leave out major narratives of the world and a lot of its people. And I think we need to be mindful of that. Like this is a limitation of a tool that almost prematurely exists out there, like that has been put out there and like generates with a lot of confidence, even though it has these major equity issues. And I think education researchers, educators have been working tirelessly to narrow that gap. Where, as Kate said, for learning resources, like we make unplugged learning resources, or for tools, like we try to make tools that work offline, or tools that may work on mobile devices, which are a lot more accessible in places. But I think this work is so far from being complete. I think there's a lot of work need to be done to make tools truly equitable, especially for learning. That's very critical.
And that's really the problem, that we might see some of today's inequities exacerbated, right? The people who are in positions where they're designing the algorithms are likely to create algorithms that make it possible for them to stay in those positions of power. And the people who are not part of the teams that are designing these algorithms will not be able to access those places of power, those places where they're being designed, right? So a big part of changing that cycle of power is to make sure that the people who are not currently included in those teams know more about how these work, right? So what that means is we create adjustments to the ways that we bring designers in, or that we bring leaders in, so that people who are diverse can sit on those teams. People who are marginalized from the communities that currently exist as communities of power can be brought in. How do we do that? We make sure that people who have been marginalized or not included have knowledge about how careers of the future are changing and adjusting, so people know what skills they need to have to be useful and leaders in those areas. And building up that knowledge, that future career readiness starts with education. So a big part of changing this potentially very powerful kind of exacerbation of today's society inequity starts with education. So to really bring a transformative moment to education really comes down to making sure teachers are comfortable with using and talking about AI in their classrooms. Now, I'm not saying that teachers have to use AI or that teachers have to teach AI, but what I'm hoping is that teachers are getting to a place where they feel comfortable about making decisions about AI, right? So that's where teacher professional development comes in. So you can make informed decisions about what's best for your students. Safinah touched on this briefly, but there's ways that you can use text generative tools to adjust the reading level of content, to make it more accessible for really readers of various reading levels, but still convey the same content. There's tools you can use to summarize, and AI can also be used to read the text to you, to find keywords, and excuse me, not find keywords, but like help you understand what some of the keywords mean. But then there's also ways that you can visualize text to make it relevant and meaningful for students. And there's more, but I feel like I'm actually trespassing on an area of expertise that you have, Safinah, so I'll pause.
I've been doing a lot of this in my thesis work, and a lot of the students that we're working with are the school calls it like students of determination, and these are like students with autism spectrum disorder or attention needs or social emotional needs, and they all have different modalities of communication and interaction with one another, but also with technologies. Here we're using a method called personalized machine learning. So this is less about generative AI, but how we're using AI, like other AI algorithms to a personalized interaction to each of them. So they engage in different creative activities such as making storybooks or like telling narratives about their daily lives, about subjects they're learning, about their libraries. And the way they are interacting with the AI system that's helping them make these storybooks, that is very personalized to every child's abilities. And every child has a very unique way of how they are gathering information, how they are expressing information, how they're expressing emotions. And these are very unique opportunities also to design specifically for their abilities, like, and for their interests as well. And we've like modeled that a lot on how their caregivers and their teachers interact with every child. Like we've used that information to personalize technologies interactions with children as well. One like small study I love talking about was we once had a robot-based alternative augmented communication tool that we had built, where this was with a small school that we worked with, where all the students um, uh, have autism spectrum disorder, and they use alternative augmented communication tools such as Proloquo, which are these visual tablet-based tools that they use to communicate. So we had a robotic agent that they could communicate with to do emotional expression as well as emotion recognition using their alternative tool. And these were like small social robots that have some sort of emotion expression and social expression. And that actually worked really well, because one thing with robots is that they are very predictable and they are very repetitive in the way they interact. And for those kids, that's exactly what was needed for emotional recognition. Because one thing that they sometimes struggle with interacting with people who are neurotypical is that people's responses, emotional responses, social responses are oftentimes very unpredictable. So they felt comfortable to have that sort of emotional expression, practice their emotion recognition with a robotic agent that was very predictable. And also they had this like safe space where they can try out a bunch of different kinds of interactions. So we still use their visual mode of communication, but then we used it through a robot that could express the emotions that the child was trying to express. So let's say the child is trying to say that they're frustrated with a situation, they could use this robot communication tool for the robot to show that it's frustrated with the situation. And with a lot of repetitive guarantee, the robot will do that every time in the same way.